Okay, so here we are live once again. We've got another Masterverse unboxing, and this is Masters of the Universe New Eternia Trapjaw. Oh yeah, so we got a nice piece of artwork on the back, Trapjaw, looking nice and menacing. Got one of these cool backgrounds, reminds me a lot of the 80s artwork. Here we have something very interesting in the background. He-Man fighting against Triclops in an image very reminiscent of the first mini-comic that Triclops first appeared in. And then we got Crossall on the artwork on the back. And then we got Sorceress Tila, which I will probably be opening tomorrow. Man-at-Arms, which I opened yesterday, so if you haven't seen that video, it's up. Trapjaw, hey, that's this one. And Skeletor, which I decided I'm probably not going to buy. Maybe if I see it on clearance or something. And it looks like he's going to have an alternate head since, you know, the portrait up there looks different from the image down here. That one looks a little bit more like the original design, I think. So it says here in the bio on the back, Trapjaw, evil and armed for combat. Victory was in reach as Trapjaw raised his cybernetic claw over Man-at-Arms. As He-Man summoned the power of Grayskull, Trapjaw suddenly crossed dimensions into a shattered world, New Eternia. So now it sounds like New Eternia, rather than being like, you know, kind of loose confederation of various continuities, they have some kind of continuity of a nightmare world that they're going to be putting these characters into. So I guess they'll be building on that on bios on future figures. So we should probably pay attention to that. This would probably be a good excuse for them to put in a mini comic. I'm just saying, like, so we would have some ideas to what the story was that way. That might be nice. But anyway, let's go ahead and cut the pieces of tape on the sides here. There we go. There we go. Go ahead and open them up. We do have, I noticed on the background of, I didn't really mention it at the time, but on the background of the Man-at-Arms figure, you got things like the Battle Ram and lots of Eternian Palace guards, one of which is being led into battle by another Man-at-Arms back there, so maybe he's the Man-at-Arms from the other universe, who knows. But oh well, whatever. Maybe that's why they have different heads. Maybe they're supposed to be characters from the that broken nightmare reality and the regular reality. So the back of Man-at-Arms package, we noticed the background was a plain blue color. With Trapjaw, it's a plain red. So that's a little different. I guess the bad guys will have red and the good guys will have blue. So we'll take his tray, set it aside there. And then we've got a layout of some of the other weapons on here and how they fit into his arm. So he's got the Lasertron, the hook, the claw. It also looks like a sword. So we get one more accessory as opposed to the Filmation version, which had one less accessory. That is assuming all the accessories are actually going to be in here, unlike my poor Man-at-Arms who was missing his flail. So probably going to have to call Mattel customer service about that and be like, hey, what's the deal? Where's this flail? Can you send me another flail since mine is missing? All right, so we'll go over these pieces in a minute. I do not see an extra head in here, but it also didn't say that there was an extra head on this packaging anywhere. Maybe the extra head was something they were planning when they were still doing the artwork for the package and decided not to do at the last minute. Which is too bad, because that seems like that would be a really cool accessory. But I think this head's going to be good enough. The best thing about having an extra head with this, though, would be that the previous Masterverse Trapjaw figure that I had, the Revelation one. You might remember, if you watched that video, I did not like the head sculpt on that one. So if this one had an extra head, I could have just, you know, popped it onto that figure. So that would have been nice. But, oh well. Come to think of it, I could probably just pop one of these heads on here if I can get an extra one of these. And then he could just have that head. Oh, well. We'll figure something out with that eventually. So we can cut the a rubber tab that's holding his Lasertron in. And that's the only accessory that's in that the plastic tray here. And then we can pull him out. He does have a rubber tab around the elbow, or I'm sorry, around the shoulder. And get that off. And it looks like he's got a tab around his ankles. But I managed to get him out without cutting those. So that's good. And there's the figure out of the package. We'll go over him in just a second. First, let's talk about the accessories. So here we have the Lasertron, very familiar accessory that if you have a Triclops. I'm always going to do that. I'm always going to trip over Triclops and Trapjaw, aren't I? If you have a Trapjaw figure, you're probably familiar with this. Almost all of them come with one. And we can compare with the one that came on the Filmation one, since I have that one handy. And you can see it's still the same basic weapon, maybe a little more detailed in terms of the sculpting and the paint, but it's still recognizably the same weapon, the same ray gun, almost kind of like somewhere in between a Flash Gordon ray gun and a Star Wars ray gun. That's about where Trapjaw's Lasertron sits. And then unlike this one, who only came with the Lasertron and the hook, and put it back on his belt since it fell off his belt. This one actually does come with a claw, which kind of resembles in a little bit of ways. It looks a lot like the Trapjaw's actual jaw, but it also kind of reminds me of the Mousers from Ninja Turtles, and of course, in the Ninja Turtle crossover line recently, the Turtles to Grayskull, they did combine Trapjaw with the Mousers, so that makes sense. And then we do have the hook, and this one looks like way more detailed again than what we usually see of the hook, which basically just looks kind of like a hook you'd see on like a pirate's hand. But this one looks like it's got some like mechanization to it. So neither one of these are too incredibly similar to the ones that came with the original figure, but still recognizably the accoutrements that Trapjaw originally came with. And then last but not least, we got this cool little short sword. I like that. So that could be cool. We could have him duel with like He-Man or whatever. So let's go ahead and look at the actual figure himself. And the first thing that I notice about this is I really like the color scheme of it. It's very bright, very vibrant colors, but at the same time, it's a little more of a somewhat realistic version of what we usually see of Trapjaw. He's got gunmetal gray instead of black. The purple fur, a little bit darker with a little bit more of a wash than the kind of maroon fur that the original figure had. The belt does look to be removable. It's got like a little buckle here on the back, but it looks like it's going to be kind of a pain to get it off and on. So I'm not going to bother to take it off, but we will raise it up a little bit. And we can see that he does indeed have the standard kind of He-Man belt underneath there. It's painted in a slightly different color. It wouldn't surprise me if it would, so it is painted in like this lighter color. I will say it is really nice to have the kind of attention to detail to actually paint it. Well, I think it's actually a separate piece of plastic, but they molded it in a separate piece of plastic. They could have just made it the same piece of plastic, but they didn't. And that's nice that they actually have a little bit of verisimilitude to that belt that you're not even going to see most of the time, because you're going to have the kind of Trapjaw utility belt over it, so he can be holding his weapons. Now, one thing I will complain about is that there's no storage for this sword. It's got the standard little loops on there to hold the standard Trapjaw weaponry, which has the standard hook that goes into that loop. So the hook has its own hook to hook into the belt. But there's not like any kind of sheath or anything that I can see for this sword. Thankfully, since the sword does have an actual handle on it, he can also hold it in his hand like a regular sword. So that's kind of nice. I probably, if it was me, since it is kind of a short sword, I probably would have made some kind of sheath to put it in his boot, kind of like He-Man's boot knife. That would have been a cool thing to do. But, I'm just kind of armchair quarterbacking at that point. So, like most trap jaw figures, he does have a hinged jaw, and we can see underneath there is some like just scar tissue from whatever's left of his mouth underneath there before. But he does have the articulation there, so that's good. But yeah, I like the colors. Like with the classics version, the bionic pieces on his fleshy arm, they're made in a metallic blue, so they're still blue like the original figure was, but it's not the same color blue as his skin, so there is a distinction. Now, one thing that I wish they hadn't missed is that the wrist cuff part of the armor is supposed to be green, like the same shade of green as his face, and they did not paint that in. We can see that on the Filmation figure, that he has that green wrist cuff. So that's unfortunate, but it still looks pretty good. I don't think that, like, if I hadn't have known that was the case, I don't think that it would have bothered me. Now, one thing I want to do real quick, since I have him over here, is we have Manny faces from the new Eternia Manny faces, and I wanted to compare some of the parts on him. So it looks like he does indeed have the same left arm, at least up to the shoulder. You see where Trapjaw has a little disc there, and Manny Faces has a little kind of like almost like a sergeant's sort of chevrons, like military rank insignia. And it looks like the legs are indeed identical, which of course you would want the legs to be identical since it is, in the original figure, it was using the same mold. So it makes sense that it would use the same mold here. All right, so that's pretty cool. Now, let's go over his articulation. So I already talked about his jaw is articulated. So that does count as an articulation, so that's pretty cool. He can look up about that far, so not too far up, but a little bit. He can look up a little bit. He can look down about that far, better range of motion looking down. He can tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side, which is good because he's stupid. So you can move his head all the way around, turn it all the way around, move it any which way you want to. It's got some good articulation on it. I was wrong. I found there is actually a storage for his sword. There's a little loop here on the back. So he does have storage for his sword. So that's good. Excuse me. I keep sneezing during the videos. I sneezed yesterday too, didn't I? So anyway, we'll go back to the articulation. So we got distracted for that. So Trapjaw's arm rotates all the way around the shoulder. That's for both arms, although this one's a little stiff. And he can raise his arms up at the shoulders about that far. Not a great range of motion, but much better than what the original figure had, where it just rotated. So he does have a bicep cut. Well, he's on this arm, he has a bicep cut. On this arm, there's no articulation until you get to the elbow, but the elbow is on a ball joint, so that gives you some good range of motion. It can bend about that far up, bend about that far down, rotate all the way around, and you can move it in all kinds of ways because of the ball joint. But I would probably avoid moving it any more than you have to, because the more you move that ball joint, it's probably going to weaken and loosen, and then it's going to be a bad scene. So I'd probably try to just move it not much more than you have to. So and then on his fleshy arm, although it's very stiff, he does have a double jointed elbow. There we go. That's about the range of motion we get on the elbow. And his wrist rotates all the way around, and it has a horizontal hinge, so it can move that way and move that way. So there we go. And then he's got that articulation at the rib cage, so you can move all the way around at the rib cage. Waist rotates all the way around, so that's good. Legs kick up about that far, so about 90 degrees. Got the double joint at the knee, so we get about that range of motion. He does have a boot cut, so the boot rotates all the way around, and honestly, the boot cut seems a little bit loose. And he's got a thigh cut, so the thigh rotates all the way around. And then he's got ankles that can point down about that far, point up about that far, and of course, since it's on a rocker ankle, you can rotate that ankle all the way around. So good range of motion on the ankles. Man, I'm glad I found where that sword was supposed to store. I was at first kind of bothered by that, but nope, he has a place to store his sword, so that's good. All right, so let's go ahead and go over some of his accessories, which I've already talked about these a little bit, but we can go ahead and put him in the arm. So there we go with we got the hook. Halt or face the evil hook of Trapjaw. That hook won't stop He-Man. Then Trapjaw will use his vicious claw. So this is vicious claw. Still no contest. Then Trapjaw will use his wicked laser. It'll take more than a one-armed army to stop He-Man and Battle Cat. You win this toying, He-Man. Of course, the kid in the commercial didn't have a sword, so there he is with the sword. So that's pretty neat. And like I said, the sword actually has, it has where there's a handle with even tape around the grip and everything. So that can be a weapon that he can hold just on his own and dual wield with it. Now I know, like a lot of kids in the 80s, my favorite weapon for him was the Lasertron, so I'm going to put that in. And then we'll go ahead and put the other accessories, put those onto his belt. And there we go. Evil and armed for combat. So yeah, Trapjaw, I think, was one of the best figures in the line. He's definitely one that has a very big fan following. I would say that Trapjaw is probably, out of all the Masters of the Universe villains, like, only Skeletor really beats him out, I think, in terms of popularity. Everybody seems to love Trapjaw. I mean, some of the characters, like, I love Merman, but a lot of people think Merman's kind of goofy. I love Triclops, but a lot of people think Triclops is kind of bland. But I think he's really cool. But I think pretty much everybody agrees that Trapjaw is really cool. And this is probably one of the better Trapjaw figures that I've had. Now, I will say that the Classics version, I feel like, has a little more fidelity to the original figure. So if that's what you're looking for, I think the Classics version is definitely like the gold standard as far as that goes. This one took a little more liberties, but I think it's still really cool. And if you weren't able to get the Classics version, which is really expensive right now, well, guess what? This guy's like $20 at Walmart. So you can go ahead and pick him up, and he'd probably fit in with your Classics figures just fine, I think. So I think the Masterverse line is just getting better and better as it goes along, especially with these new Eternia offerings. Like, I know a lot of people are kind of down on the Netflix adaptations, the Kevin Smith animated shows. And like I said, I actually liked the Revelation series. I thought it was pretty good. Like, I did have some reservations about Revelation, but Revolution was, I think, much more, I think, what people would have really wanted out of a He-Man line or a He-Man series. And I think if people were willing to give that one a chance, they might find they really enjoyed it. But I think for some people, it's too little too late. And, some people can look at those, the Revelation and the Revolution toys and just be like, well, maybe I wasn't too fond of the show, but these are cool figures, so I'm going to buy them anyway. But for some people, just being associated with that brand, it's the sort of thing where it just put them off entirely. So it was probably a smart thing of Mattel to do another subset in the Masterverse brand that is not really attached to that particular series. So if you're in one of those first two groups, either people who actually enjoyed Revelation, or people who, maybe you didn't enjoy Revelation so much, but you just think the figures are good, you're probably going to buy everything. But if you're in that group of people that like just can't cotton any influence from Revelation or Revolution into your own Masterverse collection, well, guess what? You got some other cool figures that you can play around with. So yeah, I really like this Trapjaw figure. I think that with the exception of the Classics version, this is probably the best Triclops that we've gotten in this scale so far. Now, granted, I don't have. Well, I do have the Club Grayskull Trapjaw, but he was missing his head. I got him from like a China seller, and I kind of figured, well, I can maybe make him a head later on, and just never got around to it. So maybe I can buy another one of these and stick his head on there. Who knows? But that's pretty much it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm planning on coming back tomorrow and opening up Tila, Sorceress Tila. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Trapjaw, both the character in general and this figure specifically. And what do you think is the best Trapjaw figure that we've had so far? And don't just limit yourself to, like I said, this is about as good as the classics version. I think I like it probably about as much as the classics version. Maybe a little more in some ways. He does have a sword. I like swords. But comparing them to, like, say, the original one or the 2000X version, or any of the Origins versions that we've gotten so far, which one do you think is the best? I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, one last thing I'll say before I tune out from this one is, I'm a big sucker for mini comics versions of the characters, so why not redo this guy as a mini comics Trapjaw, give him the kind of just regular He-Man legs and cast him so that his body is that kind of yellowish green color. I think that would be really cool. Anyway, we will talk to you next time. Bye.